Why deal with damage when you can prevent it from happening in the first place? Do you prefer to learn a bike first or getting medications after getting injured? My name is Nua Kameumeut and I'm from SMA Labschool Kebayoran. Today, I'll be talking about in areas prone to disaster, this house believes that the state should prioritize disaster mitigations over relocation. But before we get started, let me define what does disaster mitigation and relocation means. This is important because some may have different perspective. So, disaster mitigation is actions that are taken to reduce the damage or danger caused by disaster before it actually happens. It can come in a physical approach like building earthquake-resistant buildings, dams, and mangrove reforestation. It could also be something that is learned like policy, laws, and education. Education as in having simulation and trainings. Now, on the other hand, relocation means moving citizens to a better place after the disaster actually happens. Now, to win this debate, I will have to prove 1 point and 1 point only, which is why preventive should be prioritized over repressive approach. Therefore, this shows that we strongly support this motion. Hearing my point before, the opposing team might say that first, disaster mitigation costs more money or is not effective because we do not know when the disaster actually happens. Well, in this context, where areas are prone to disaster, not knowing when the natural disaster happens does not actually matter. You'll be wondering, asking why. Well, I believe that disaster mitigation does not always come in physical approach like building expensive barriers and dams. It could come in different forms like education and training simulation like I've said before. I believe that this should be a standard both in areas that is prone to disaster and areas that are considered safe as well. Having disaster mitigations in any type of place should be a requirement. It could start from the smallest things, like having an emergency exit, which most places already have, or having assembly points and an educational approach for schools, like having simulations like earthquake simulations, earthquake trainings. Now, even if disaster does not happen, disaster mitigation is a long-term solution. It could be a long-time benefit for everyone. So rather than repeating the same cycle after it happens, like relocating for example, why don't we just prevent it from happening? Besides, relocation is not cheap as well. And this leads to the second argument that the opposing team might say too, that human lives also matter. Of course it does, and I agree with the statement. It supports my argument as well. The opposing team may argue that areas that are prone to disaster are likely to be unlivable or unsafe. While relocation can indeed help a disaster occurs, it still is a reactive solution. Disaster mitigation, on the other hand, focuses on preventing chaos and disaster before it actually happens, making it more effective. So, highlighting back to what the opposing team might say that it is not effective, well, this point proves them wrong. Not all citizens also wants to be relocated or feel comfortable from moving from their houses. For example, imagine you live in a village where you've grown there your entire life. Then suddenly you'll be forced to be moved somewhere unfamiliar just because a disaster happened when it actually could not happen if they already have a prevention at the first place, like disaster mitigation, for example. With proper disaster mitigation such as barriers, early warning systems, and public education, many of these risks and forced relocation could be reduced in the first place. The preemptions that I've stated previously strongly proves and actually are the reason why preventive should be prioritized over repressive approach. Let me define what prevention means. So, prevention approach in my context means that actions that are taken before something actually happens, while repressive approach means actions that are taken after something happens. So again, let me ask you back. Do you prioritize to learn something first to stop something from happening, to stop the worst case scenario from happening, or choose to wait until it comes? Like when you're in a test, do you choose to learn the materials before the exam, or just not study because there will be a remedial after all? Now, this case is just the same thing as having disaster mitigation and relocation. It's the same thing as choosing disaster mitigation or relocation. In a place where that is exposed to disaster, like the city we live in, for example, yes, Jakarta, we experience flood most of the time. Of course, it is better to have disaster mitigation to prevent and to lessen the damage that are given after it happens. Like, it is better for citizens in Jakarta to stop throwing their waste everywhere. Again, restating from what I've said before, prevention creates a long-term stability. So even if Jakarta is not currently experiencing a disaster, it could be a long-time solution for us, for our next generation. Of course, we don't know what it's like living in their shoes, being someone who lives in areas that are prone to disaster, which is why we should prioritize having solutions that could help them instead of having solutions that is forceful. With capacity building, it will be beneficial not just from them who wants to live safely, but also for our country to have a better capacity building. My name is Nua Kameumeut and I'm from SMA Labschool, Kebayoran.